Today's tutorial will be on contemporary development economics. We will continue our discussion with regard to environment and development. Now, under this broad heading, we started with a topic termed as the environmental Kuznets curve. We have already explained what the curve actually means. Now, in today's tutorial, we will look at the explanations, the 4 different explanations I have introduced to you in the previous tutorial or the last tutorial, that can be put forward as to why we get an inverted U relationship with regard between the per capita income and the environmental degradation. So let us begin. Now the first explanation is coming from the composition of output. Now how this can explain the shape? Now the switch that take place from agriculture to industrial output could actually increase environmental degradation while the downward sloping path which was there in the diagram looks something like this. I'll draw it for you so that if you don't remember, it becomes easy. This is your environmental degradation and it used to look something like this. This is marked as the turning point. This is 0 and this is our EKC curve. So the downward sloping part could arise from an increase in the importance of services as the economy develops. Now the second part you must know, or the second explanation that can be put forwarded, is the technological progress. Now the growth in income, so we will be discussing this now, is in part determined by the technological progress. That means it is determined by this okay, and that can actually increase technical efficiency and can actually also reduce the emissions or waste, and you can calculate per unit of output that might more than offset increased production. Thirdly, or the third factor, is the rise in living standard. Now this may actually induce a change in priorities in consumption. So I mean that greater is the concern about the environment may actually lead to a concerted program of population abatement reduction in a country rich enough to have means to adequately monitor, because if these are not available you cannot do it, isn't it? So you must have a lot of money to actually financially support the program, and enforce the environmental regulations to improve the environmental quality. So this is the third explanation. Then the last explanation with regard to this is the transboundary externality. Now this is very interesting, so I'll take a little bit of more time in explaining this. Now finally, an environmental Kuznets curve may arise from polluting industries and waste transcending national boundaries. By this I mean migrating from rich to poor countries. Okay? Now this actually exemplified by acid rain, then you can add the global warming, even the flooding in Bangladesh due to deforestation in India. However, this only applies to some pollutants and not to all. Now let us draw two such curves to understand this more clearly. Okay, so we have, so this is the first, so it will be a two panel diagram. I will be making two separate diagrams. Zero. Here I will be measuring smoke, and this will actually shows the relationship between per capita income and smoke concentration. Okay. In cities, and the other panel will show the relationship between per capita income and access to safe drinking water. Okay. Safe drinking water. Okay. So let me draw the curves now. So I'll use another color because green entirely looks really messy now. So we have something like this. I'll make some dots. I'll explain it to you what I mean by this. And then we have two curves. Okay. Like this. Say where this solid line represent 1993 and this dotted line represent 2004. I'm just randomly making it. Okay. This is the percentage of people without safe drinking water. Okay. So here on this axis I'll be measuring percentage of people without access to safe drinking water. Okay. And this may be like from 10, 20, 30, 40, 50, 60, 70. So I've just made a rough diagram. It was not exactly like this but somewhat like this. Okay. So what these two diagrams tells us? Now this particular figure here shows the relationship between income and the most basic environmental good, which is access to, so let me change the color, access to safe drinking water, now which is an now if I have there are two groups. One is for 1993 and the other is for 2004, the dotted line. Okay. Now this particular figure which I have drawn here clearly show that as income increases, so as Y increases, access to safe drinking water actually improves, isn't it? And these two graphs shows that richer countries have higher levels of at least these measures of environmental quality. Now we move on to figure number 3. This shows a similar curve for smoke suspended particle. Now since smoke concentration varies widely within country, we show a modified, what I have drawn is a modified scatter plot of the median concentration of suspended particulate matter. Okay. Now some economists will focus on the purely developed property right in explaining how environmental quality actually changes with per capita income. Now the environmental Kuznets curve that you can see here were generated now I've just made a replica. It is not exactly, but it is, you can see it on the internet. It is using the data for different country for same year. Now such curves used to show what will happen to environmental quality as income rises in a specific country over time. And this is not the same thing as comparing countries at one point of time. Now in our next tutorial we will cover the determinants of the slope of the ECK curve.